March 16th, 2020.
Yeah, it's the day our world's changed forever. We started working from home. I remember getting the call, it was Friday or Saturday night, telling me we're going to start working from home for the next, I think, 2 weeks. So the whole supply chain group showed up that Sunday, picked up our equipment, said, goodbye, see you in 2 weeks. I said, well, we'll probably be 6 weeks. Everyone's like, no way, you're out of your mind. We'll be back. And here we are 2.5 years later, working from home. So
the world changed for good.
Join Charlie Maloof as he explores the personal journeys of Broad River Retail's very own memory makers. Welcome to Stories from the River.
Hey, we're here with Brian Deckelnick, our Senior Director of Supply Chain at the River. Brian, welcome to the pod.
Oh, thanks for having me, Charlie. It's a pleasure.
Hey, welcome to Stories from the River, guys. We're going to have a great conversation. Brian, you've been mentioned and named by several of our past guests who we've had here on the river. And so I've really been looking forward to having this conversation with you.
Yeah, $20 will go a long way.
Yes, it will. Well, let's see how long it goes. Okay. All right, Brian. Well, before we get going, I always like to learn a little bit about our guests. So tell us a little bit about you before you joined the river.
Yeah, so I was born and raised in New Jersey. Went to school there, got my undergrad in business management. Funny story, I feel like the Baltimore Colts, if you're familiar with that story of how they kind of packed up and left overnight. I was in my last year of college, and my sister came down to North Carolina and looking for a job in teaching, and my parents just came along for the ride. And they came back and they said, oh, we got some news. We bought a house in North Carolina. I'm like, what do you mean you bought a house in North Carolina? Like, I'm still in school. I'm like, I wasn't living with them at that time. Thankfully, I was living with some guys, some friends of mine. But so like all of a sudden overnight, I'm in New Jersey all alone. My family's down in North Carolina. But I met Heather, my future wife there, and we got married, and we wound up moving down to North Carolina in 2006. And then, kind of things progressed, and before you know it, here I am. Wow.
So like the Baltimore Colts, I love that metaphor. I had not heard that before. So how long have you been with Broad River Retail?
So I've been here 3.5 years, starting in April 2019.
Okay. April 2019. Now, you've got an interesting recruitment story, and I'll just share a little bit about it. We actually met you in 2015, I believe, about 4 years before you joined us.
Yeah, I think I've got the longest recruitment in the company history.
The 4-year recruitment, yeah. So we interviewed you, and I think life is a lot about timing sometimes. And we were a little bit smaller company then, and we had a lot of growing to do. You probably had a little bit of growing to do, and so 4 years later, the role had expanded, and we still needed you and someone like you with your skill sets. And so then, like, why do you think the timing was right 4 years later? And what'd you walk into, 4 years later?
Yeah. So, I'm a firm believer that things happen when they're supposed to, like I said, the timing maybe just wasn't right for one reason or another. I'd say we flirted with each other for about 4 years. Jim and Pam on The Office, or Diane and Sam on Cheers for people of a certain age.
Well, who's Jim, who's Pam, and who's Sam, and who's Diane?
Well, we won't go there. But things happen for a reason. Like you said, I think, we stayed in contact. Broad River continued to grow. I think, I continued to grow and develop. And I think, I think I brought a better version of myself to the company when I started. So I think it definitely worked out for the best.
Yeah, well, I think we definitely brought a better version of ourselves. And I want to get into kind of the environment that you walked into. But, I think there's a business lesson there to always be recruiting. Always be planting those seeds and sowing those seeds and watering them, because you never know when they'll sprout up, but you just got to have that recruiting activity. I still vividly remember the conversation. I think I was watching college basketball or something on a Saturday when we were trying to finalize the deal. So it was, I'm so glad that it worked out, and it worked out when it needed to work out.
Yeah, I remember that vividly. In fact, you had called me, I think it was a Saturday or Sunday or something, and it was the day before I was leaving for a Disney cruise, and I'm sitting there like at a Jersey Mike's or something picking up dinner, and you call and I pick up. I'm like, oh, Charlie, I'd love to talk to you, but I'm like, we're leaving in like 12 hours for can I call you when I get back? And so yeah, I came back, called, and I think you were watching an Ole Miss game with your boys, and we talked for about an hour and hashed it out.
Awesome. So I tend to believe that most people remember their first day with the company, and we're maybe a little bit more intentional about it. But do you remember your first day at the river?
Yeah, I do. I spent a lot of time with Tim Sapkaliak, and really what I remember is just thinking this guy's got his finger on the pulse. He knows what's going on. There's a solid foundation here that we can, kind of grow upon. I think, you and I went to lunch and we, spent some time talking, and it was a busy first week. We had the RX meeting. My first RX meeting was in my first week, so I sat through that for 2 days.
That was appropriately timed.
Yeah, we had the Bed for Kids dinner. I go there. I don't know anyone. I think that was my second day, and I'm just sitting there like I don't know who anyone does, what they do, but yeah, it was a hectic first week.
Yeah, that was their annual fundraising gala or event. Yeah. I remember that. I remember that week now. The memories. A lot of them got erased during COVID, but they're starting to come back. And we've had Tim on the podcast. And so Tim was the senior manager, I think, at the time of supply chain. Yep. And so you were coming in to partner with him at that time to help run the organization. So our organizational purpose is furnishing life's best memories. So what has been one of your best memories thus far at the river?
Yeah, I think this has been a popular answer on the podcast, but I think it's that gala we had in January of 2020, celebrating our people. And, I think it was kind of like that last moment before the world changed, that everyone remembers. And it was just great food and good people, and, just everyone had a great time.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun. That was celebrating our year of success from 2019, from our year of purpose. And first time we'd really done a big in-person gala like that. So it was a really special night. So what are you most proud of thus far in your Broad River career? You're 3.5 years in. Is there a certain accomplishment or achievement that really stands out for you?
Yeah, it's definitely the growth of the team. Like I said, when I started, I sat with Tim Sapkaliak, the senior manager, and at that time, supply chain was just order management. We're a much larger company now, or department now, and so the growth of the team, and really the growth of the people in the team. And I'm very proud to say the 6 people that were around the table when I started in supply chain are still in the company. 5 of them are still in supply chain. Tim went off and took an opportunity with IT. He felt like he could, kind of help the company better there. But yeah, all 5 of the order management specialists that were here when I started are still here, and 3 of them have grown into supervisor roles in supply chain. So just seeing them grow and develop has been just amazing to watch. That's
really, really cool. Now I want to get into like the team dynamics and development here shortly. But first, I think we need to kind of unpack this topic of supply chain as a home furnishings retailer. So, I think that, primarily one that's a single source provider, like we work with a primary vendor, Ashley Furniture Industries. We also work with other providers like Tempur Sealy. So I think you would agree that it's fair to say that as an operator of Ashley stores, supply chain means something totally different for us than it might mean across other industries like manufacturing or within other companies where it might be more logistics laden or a lot of importing and bringing other maybe thousands of vendors. And I know you've had some experience in the manufacturing industry in the past. How would other companies and industries typically define or think about supply chain?
Yeah, like you said, I came from a furniture manufacturer before I was here, and the supply chain was much more. It was a bigger umbrella. So, under my role as director of supply chain there, I had planning, I had PO management, vendor management, warehousing, logistics, customer service. So like I said, it was just a much bigger umbrella. So obviously here, we have a lot of those same, and production scheduling, which, obviously big part of manufacturing. So it's like I said, it's just kind of a bigger umbrella than
Okay, so how does that differ for Broad River? Like, help us understand what supply chain is and what it isn't for Broad River.
Sure. So, we're a retail company, obviously, so manufacturing is not really top of mind, otherwise, when talking to Ashley. But and then just being a licensee for Ashley, right? So that changes the vendor-customer dynamic significantly. Their name is on our signage. We do business as Ashley Furniture, so... but I will say this, they've been an amazing partner. They're always there when we need them. And, we have weekly calls with them and daily impromptu calls or emails, and but it certainly changes that relationship between the vendor and customer. And then as a manufacturer, our customer is not a dealer or the retail. We're specifically looking at the end consumer. So there's much more focus on getting the product in the customer's home as opposed to like into someone's showroom or store.
So walk us through some of the functions, tasks, and responsibilities within the supply chain department for what you're responsible for here at the River.
Sure. So our supply chain really breaks into 4 different areas.
Okay.
We have the order management team that I walked into. We've rebranded them Open Order Solutions, but a lot of the same ideas, right? So they're doing the add-ons, they're setting up quote routes. They're really the gatekeepers for Project Ship, which I think we'll probably get into in a little bit. But making sure we have guidelines and parameters set around that, and so they're making sure that's being followed and contacting our retail partners if something needs to change. And then we have our Manifest Solutions team. So that's kind of at the last step before delivery. So we will send our sales orders to picking for the warehouse to pick and prep and deliver. But at that point, the sales orders are locked, so no one's allowed to make changes. So they have these special privileges if something needs to change of address, product changes, what have you. So that goes through them. We have our delivery scheduling team, which is exactly what it sounds like. They're the ones calling customers and getting those deliveries scheduled and making sure to get the product out the door. And then we have our supply chain solutions team, which would be what a lot of people would prototypically think of as a supply chain department: PO management, vendor management, things like that. Yeah.
So a lot of it is just all the last minute, like when you're doing the last mile and trying to get product into customers' homes. We deliver. When we on our delivery days, how many pieces or deliveries do we deliver typically in a day?
Yeah, so we usually ship out about 1,850, about 2,500 pieces a day.
And that's to what, 500, 600 customers, or?
Yeah, about 600.
So that's a lot of touch points, and you guys have to make sure that all those customers are booked, scheduled, and the phone number's correct, the address correct, and maybe the gate codes are correct, and all those things. So there's a lot of minor details, making sure that they're super accurate, because then those orders have to go to the distribution centers, the warehouse, to pick and prep and get that product ready. So I'm sure it's always a major deadline every single day, right?
Oh yeah, we work on deadlines. And like I said, there's a lot of minor details where if any one of them goes wrong, it might be an unsuccessful delivery. And now we've sent product out, we've disappointed a customer, it's coming back, you've increased touches, increased risk of damage. So it's really important.
And if anything we've learned over the last 2.5 years, it's that if anything goes wrong, any link breaks, it could throw a whole wrinkle into the entire ecosystem, like blocking the Suez Canal, for instance, with the freight ship.
Yeah, I mean, the cliche is a chain is only as strong as its weakest link.
That's right. Right. So you mentioned that you started. We had, I think you said 6 people in the department that you walked into. Okay, right. So your department has certainly grown. I mean, supply chain has kind of become a really hot topic over the last couple of years. You've become a really popular guy, and
I wish I was this popular in high school.
Well, you're certainly this popular now. You're having a renaissance now. So, how much has your department grown within the last 2+ years?
Oh, exponentially. Literally, I think we're about 6 times the size we were when I first started. So we've got 28 memory makers. 29, I guess, if you include me, and we do have an open position, so that'd be 30 total.
Wow, that's significant. And you recently created a vision for the department and crystallized and enhanced organizational structure. And so, when did that reorganization take place?
Yeah, so our vision, we want to be the premier retail support partner at Broad River Retail, right? We're a retail company. There are 2 departments as far as I'm concerned. There's retail and there's retail support. So we want to be the premier department in retail support. It's hard to put a firm date on when that crystallized. It's really developed organically over time. Like I said, when I walked in, we were really just order management and quickly see the need of this supply chain solutions team, right? So in late 2019, we moved Danielle Dalton Lassiter. If you've seen her podcast, you know that story. But we moved her over to supply chain solutions to do the kind of vendor management, PO management. And then right before we left for the pandemic, we had the opportunity to take on a couple of memory makers from ops, Nadia and Kalima. And then that developed into another part of supply chain, which is the Manifest Solutions team. And then, as we'll get into it, Project Ship here, but it necessitated people to call customers and schedule their orders, and that's how we developed the delivery scheduling team. Just so as we continue to grow and develop and get better, the department has continued to grow and develop and get better.
Well, and we're going to get into Project Ship. I promise you. I got several questions for that, and we're going to give you a great forum to speak to it. I love that vision, though, the way you explained it. The premier retail support department for the company, and just the two functions, retail and retail support. And some people, even supply chain can be just defined so many different ways. It can sit under different departments in certain companies, under finance or merchandising or operations, or maybe even home delivery or logistics. But it's a standalone department for us, kind of a head on a swivel, can kind of work with all kinds of departments. I want to talk about that in a bit. But even the Manifest Solutions and delivery scheduling could live in like home delivery or operations or the call center. Supply chain could also live in the call center. So it's interesting that we have it as a standalone organization. It takes a really strong, great leader, and you've done a tremendous job helping us really exponentially grow the department to help us solve a lot of these riddles that we've been presented with. So the past couple of years have been a breeze for you and your team, right?
Oh, easy peasy, smooth sailing, right? No, it's definitely been challenging. A lot of blood, sweat, and tears, probably especially tears, have gone into the last couple of years. But we've weathered the storm, and I like to believe that we've come out strong on the other side.
Yeah, I think so. I think we will definitely come out a lot stronger. Sometimes adversity tests us, and we are able to build that resiliency. So prior to inflation taking over as the hottest business topic, I think the supply chain was one of the most talked about topics in business and for its impact on the economy for quite a while. So I want to give you an opportunity to share your experiences during the pandemic as it relates to COVID's impact on the supply chain. To begin, we had to fill up a brand new distribution center in Four Oaks, North Carolina, with product right when the pandemic hit. What do you recall about that experience, going from one DC to two, like this huge new campus, and hiring 36 memory makers right in late March 2020? And how did that ultimately benefit us?
Yeah, I mean, first I would say the timing was incredibly fortunate. Which is, sounds strange to say that the timing was fortunate during the beginning of the pandemic, right? But had it been delayed a few months, we would have had a lot greater challenges, So the supply chain's like a Titanic, right? It just, not that it sinks, but it takes a long time to turn, right? It doesn't turn on a dime. So, in March 2020, it took a while to feel the pain of the supply chain challenges that the entire world would have. In March 2020, there was still inventory available in advance. There were still containers on the water coming in. So there was still product flowing at the time. So it allowed us to fill the DC with inventory. I'm sorry.
Well, so I'm sorry to cut you off, but we tried to stop those orders, right?
Yeah, some of them, yeah.
And Ashley asked us to take them regardless. And so we kind of filled up the DC in spite of that.
We did, but it wound up being a blessing. So having the two DCs, for one, we're closer to our customers out in the, eastern regions. So, it's easier for us to get there. It's cheaper for us to get there. We're able to give better times, and then just the ability to carry that additional inventory. We're able to deliver faster than we would be otherwise.
Well, I think what you're alluding to with this deferred pain, because we did feel the pain eventually.
We did.
But the deferred pain was, no one really anticipated the impact of demand in home furnishings once the stimulus money began hitting.
Yep.
And it's like the faucet turned on. And you spoke earlier about, hey, yeah, we're all going to work. When you opened, you said, we're just going to go away for a couple weeks, which turned into 6 weeks, 8 weeks, 2.5 years later, right?
Yep.
And so, where we thought we were going to be in a world of hurt with everyone in the second quarter of 2020, having that inventory available really helped us take care of our guests right at the beginning of the pandemic in magnificent ways. So I think that's how it kind of was the blessing that you alluded to.
Absolutely. Yeah.
But I know it was still really tough for all of us in so many ways. And I'm sure we'd much sooner forget it than relive it. So take us back through the back half of 2020, when I think the pain started to really hit us and the impacts of COVID started really wreaking havoc on our supply chain.
Yeah, it got challenging. Getting any inventory from anyone became a challenge. I mean, we had to, really just beg and plead to get, stuff at some point. I'm sure you'll recall, we had the opportunity to buy some containers from Ashley that were on, they was for their DCs, but they were redirecting it to offering it to licensees. And, we got some interesting mix of inventory on those. But I mean, at that point, it was the wild, wild west. Take what you can get when it's available. And you talked about the impact at the end of 2020. So pre-pandemic, our broken promise rate was, hovering around that 7% range, which is, not acceptable. We strive to continue to improve on that. But by the end of 2020, that 7% became 40%. So we were disappointing 2 of every 5 customers that walked through the door.
Which ultimately we had to change our messaging at the point of sale to because the technology that was telling us we could get product to customers at a certain date, we learned was probably too late, was really inaccurate.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. And then, that 40% broken promise rate, somebody's got to manage those orders, right? And who's going to do it other than order management? So there were a lot of nights, when I say a lot of nights, I mean, 5 nights a week for several months, where, myself, Tim Sapkowiak, Danielle Lassiter, Alex Lowe, we were up till, midnight scrubbing PODs every night, just to get them done so we can get those deliveries out.
Yeah. So we built this backlog in the back half of 2020, and even into 2021. And we began 2021 with this massive backlog. I think the statistic is, and you spoke about broken promises, in the last 26 weeks of 2020, I believe we added $1 million a week to our backlog, which used to be at a much lower level. And then it got really, really large and bloated. And embedded within that, we were writing a whole lot of business because all the stimulus money was out there, but we were also canceling a lot of business, which cancellations tripled. So we're canceling a lot of business, we're writing a lot of business, and we're breaking a lot of promises, and we're building this massive backlog because we're taking their customers like writing the sale, and we're just not able to get it out quick enough. And this is happening all over the country, all over the globe. So we had upset customers, frustrated memory makers, and a cloud of murkiness and uncertainty hanging over our heads at the beginning of 2021. And then what happened? What was our company's response to that?
Yeah, I mean, so we knew the status quo was not sustainable. Something had to change. And we had conversations with a partner licensee, FDE, up in New York and New Jersey, and they had worked with stores to develop this add-on tool that was really just it's an inventory reservation tool, right? So every night it would go through and just try to create these fully reserved orders that we can ship out, right? Because the way stores would organically reserve inventory is based on the delivery date. Well, part of the issue we were having was what we would call these dancing ATP dates, right? So I can walk into a store today and order, a sofa, and it would say, okay, it'll be available December 1st. Tomorrow I would walk in, it would say, okay, it's going to be available January 1st. The next day I could walk in, it would come in and say, okay, it'll be available November 1st. So what wound up happening is we would be filling, newer orders sooner than older orders just based on the availability that, was provided to us at point of sale. And it was especially challenging for things like sectionals and beds where it takes multiple pieces to make one item. So we had inventory reservations all over the place. So you may be able to deliver a sectional, but you've got the left arm facing on this order, the right arm facing on that order. So this utility that FDE created with stores would, consolidate that inventory into one. We did have some reservations to begin with about using that, mainly about how we would message that to the customer, because now the logic in Storis for ATP is no longer valid because it's a different reservation process. But like I said, at some point we got, this is just not sustainable anymore. We can't continue to break it for 40% broken promises. We were struggling to deliver what we were used to delivering at that time. So it was really an entire company effort. We all came together for a day and tried to hammer out a process, and that was the birth of Project Ship.
Yeah, so you came up with an appropriate acronym.
Yep.
People don't know that SHIP, we put it in all caps, is an acronym
Yep.
for, and you came up with this acronym and project name.
Yeah, it's probably the most creative thing I've ever come up with in my life. I am not a marketing creative type person, but it's sales order health and inventory prioritization.
Yeah, and it's a perfect name, and I'm glad that the lightning struck when it did. And Project SHIP has been our top enterprise-wide initiative since then, for so many reasons, right? It helps our financials, it helps our guests, it helps our commissioned associates get paid, and this lopsided inventory, like warehouses can't hold lopsided reservations when customers aren't going to take the wedge and not the rest of the sectional, that sort of thing, and helped us, convey to the manufacturers to get the product faster and helped us get more product in. So help explain why Project SHIP has been and is so important to the company and to our guests.
There were kind of 3 targets for Project SHIP that we were trying to achieve. One was deliver more furniture. Mm-hmm. 2 was get more inventory into our DCs. Now we had the second DC. And 3 was decrease broken promises. So really, we really reimagined our business model from point of sale up to until delivery. Mm-hmm. You alluded to before, we stopped, kind of promising dates at point of sale for the most part. And, so it took recrafting that message. I mean, obviously everyone's very used to walking into an Ashley furniture store and, it's made to stock furniture. It should be available, pretty quickly. And, should expect to reasonably get their furniture in, a week or 2. Mm-hmm. Obviously, the pandemic and the supply chain issues that the whole world experienced changed that. We had the 40% broken promises, so we had to stop making those promises. Don't promise what you can't deliver on. So we started telling customers, sorry, supply chain, global pandemic, we can't give you a date right now. We don't want to tell you something that we're going to wind up disappointing you. But what we can promise is that we will monitor your order and we will let you know as soon as it's available for delivery.
And one of the outcomes of Project SHIP, our broken promises immediately went below pre-pandemic levels, right?
Yeah, that's right. Now one could argue, if you're not making a promise, it's difficult to break it. But I mean, that's kind of the point, right? We were making these promises we couldn't keep, and we couldn't provide good dates. So, the way we started was, we felt comfortable if it showed availability within 2 weeks, let's schedule a delivery at point of sale, make that promise to the customer. But anything outside of that, we just got to tell them that we will monitor your order. We want you to have your furniture as much as you want to have it in your home. And as soon as it's available, we'll let you know. But with Project SHIP, it really came together quickly, and we immediately saw the benefits. Almost overnight, we started getting more inventory from Ashley. The way we were writing sales orders differently, and then more inventory, more delivered sales, and like I said, then not making those promises at point of sale, our broken promises dropped down to 5%. Mm-hmm. So you set the realistic expectations at point of sale, and I at that point, I don't think anyone could ask for anything more.
I really think there's so many great lessons in the creation of this project. First of all, we got this great utility that we had learned from other friends in the industry, mm-hmm. Other Ashley licensees, who are great friends of ours, the Crinians up in New York, New Jersey, who put it into place with our technology partner, Storis. We learned they offered it freely available to us. Mm-hmm. We're so gracious for that.
Absolutely.
And then we had a business problem to solve. And so one thing the pandemic has taught us, don't be afraid to pivot. And so you talked about the Titanic, these things aren't easy to move, but we changed a whole business model and way of doing business for hundreds of people within our company and thousands of guests pretty much on a dime. And we put this system into place because we knew what it would solve. And then we instantly started getting more product in, reducing our broken promises. Now you can't eliminate a backlog that was 7 or 8 months in the making overnight, but we started instantly kind of reducing that backlog down in as much as I think when you put Project SHIP in place in week 7 or 8 of 2021, we made up all the ground that we had lost in the first 7 or 8 weeks of 2021. And in last year in 2021, we delivered as much product as we wrote. Mm-hmm. So even though there was still supply chain madness and craziness, And even though it was a record written sales year for us and many other home furnishings retailers in 2021, with the couple stimulus that infused demand and and the tailwinds that really powered demand, we were able to keep pace and then some with our delivered sales. That's just a really testament to all the ingenuity and creativity that went into Project Ship.
Yeah, and collaboration, right? I mean, if we didn't have those conversations with FDE, we wouldn't know about it. And then our internal collaboration, like I said, I mean, every department was involved in that meeting talking about how we just reimagine our entire point of sale process. And then it also just speaks to the open-mindedness that everyone has and trying to do what's best for the company and for the customer.
Absolutely. So we've had some interesting wrinkles, some additional wrinkles over the past year. We opened and subsequently closed a temporary satellite storage warehouse a few miles south of Fort Mill, Lakemont, to open up some more capacity for us for a period of time. And then we completed an acquisition of 2 stores in Wilmington, North Carolina, and had to maintain their not one, but 2 smaller warehouses, I guess you could call them warehouses, for a few months before consolidating them into our store's ERP system, as well as to our 4 Oaks distribution center. So what can you share about your experience and stories during the coastal connection? And you can touch on York Southern, the temporary satellite DC, if you want as well.
Sure. So yeah, York Southern, I mean, we can touch on that quickly. So like you spoke about, the demand did not dry up like people kind of anticipated at the beginning of the pandemic. So our backlog just grew and grew and grew. So our demand kept coming, supply wasn't, right? So we had all these open orders, and then as inventory became available, we had nowhere to store it. So we did have to open this satellite location in York Southern, and it, I think we had it open for 8-9 months, and it served an incredible purpose for us while we had it and needed it. And then for Coastal Connection, that was a little bit of a challenge to begin with. So I mean, first of all, they were on profit when we took on those stores, and I had no experience profit. I know we used to be on it, but converted to stores long before I started here. So it was just, for me, it was just the challenge of learning a new system, right? And, because we would get these questions and I, had to figure out where do I go get the answers. And there was also a difference in processes. Being the size we are and having the warehouse space we have, we hold inventory, we hold safety stock, and it's kind of in this hopper, right, where it's open for any sales order. The Wilmington stores, they would write a purchase order per sales order. So that PO is linked to that sales order. So any delay in a PO is going to impact that sales order, and it's difficult to try to backfill it with other inventory. And then another challenge was just the movement of orders from their account with Ashley to our account, which is really, kind of the biggest hurdle we faced there. So unfortunately, they couldn't just pick up the existing purchase orders and move them over to our account. They had to cancel the existing, create new ones under ours. That pushes us to the back of the line, which would cause delays for a lot of those, orders that have been open for 5, 6, 7 months for the Wilmington stores. So it was a lot of collaboration with the stores, a lot of communication with the stores, and a lot of creative problem solving to try to get orders filled. With those delays, and Ashley again stepped up and prioritized everything they could for us, understanding the situation. And then we would move inventory from 4 Oaks or Fort Mill out to Wilmington to help fill sales orders faster for those that Ashley could not prioritize.
It's really never easy, is it?
It's never easy.
And there's so much that goes on behind the scenes that people just don't always realize. And we're just talking about, acquiring a couple of stores and trying to bring them into our fold. But there's so much, and having delayed purchase orders that were already or had already been delayed was not acceptable. And because we had more scale, their backlog was a lot larger pro rata relative to what ours had been. So they've seen tremendous success though now once we got to 4 Oaks and their speed to customer. So maybe I'm going to ask you to play a little bit of Nostradamus here for a second and make some predictions. So as of this recording, we'll go back to Project Ship for just a second. We still have a little bit of an excess backlog, and our speed to customer is not quite where we want it to be. It's been significantly improving on both fronts. But it's certain neither of them are where they were pre-COVID. So when will Project Ship be retired? When will you no longer be the most popular kid at the dance?
I think it stops becoming a top initiative for the company by the end of the year. If we're not at normalized backlog, I think we'll be really, really close by the end of the year. We're continuing to see improved dates or improved data from Ashley, and more arriving when it's supposed to. If you go back, January, February of this year, I think about 30% of our orders were being scheduled for delivery at point of sale based on the lead time that, if it's available within 4 weeks now, we'll schedule. That's been about 70%.
Wow.
So more than double of the orders are being scheduled at point of sale. So we're seeing continual improvement. We expect to see that continual improvement. And I think we can retire it as a top initiative by the end of the year.
So we go back to normal officially by the end of the year, starting 2023.
I think like most things, I don't know that we ever go back to the, maybe a new normal. We got to figure out what that looks like. But I think, by and large, it's, things become normalized by the end of the year.
Well, just to kind of open up an internal joke we've had, are you going to be disappointed and to be no longer the most popular man in the company and no longer have the lead story and message for every company town hall?
I am very comfortable saying no to that question. You've heard me say, I'm sure a lot of people have heard me say, supply chain is like the offensive line of a football team. If you hear their name, the quarterback's been sacked, something's gone terribly wrong. I am very happy to go back to anonymity and, we do our role in the background. And if no one knows that we're here, it means we're doing it well.
Brian, after this podcast airs, there's no going back to anonymity. One of the things that's been kind of funny is we've hit some record delivered sales weeks this year. And we got to this new threshold of a $6 million delivered sales week. And supply chain and all of the retail support functions are helping us have a record delivered sales year this year. I think we've already passed last year. I'm not quite sure, but we're going to grow our sales between 20 and 25% over a record year that was a 33% growth last year. Mm-hmm. So in 2021, we grew 33% with Project Ship on outbound, and we'll grow another 20 to 25% this year, all in pursuit of something we've talked about on this podcast, our BTAG, our big, thriving, audacious goal. But it's I remember how upset you got when you didn't, we had never done it before. And then all of a sudden 1 week we get to 5.99 and you were really upset about that.
Yeah, it doesn't take long to get spoiled, right? You start hitting numbers and you want to hit them every week. And I think I had mentioned that to you. I took a moment to reflect of where we were at that point. I'm like, oh, gosh, I can't believe I'm so upset about not hitting 6 million. It's like it wasn't that long ago. We were struggling to hit 3 million then it was a big deal when we crossed 4 million, a big deal when we crossed 5 million. So just, it speaks to our growth and the continued success we have as a company.
Well, I think it speaks to how well our supply chain and home delivery and operations and CX and retail support teams are doing.
It takes a village, right? Everyone's involved in our success.
It takes a village. Okay. But once Project Ship is retired, we're not really going back to normal, at least not in the sense of where we were in February 2020 before COVID, where we just had a single distribution center. We've grown and expanded. How have we grown during the pandemic from a supply chain perspective?
Yeah, like I said before, I think we're going to come out of this stronger and better. The issues we've had over the last couple of years have forced us to get creative, to get innovative. We've created innovative new processes that, I expect will carry forward into the new normal. The most recent one is looking at customer reschedules and how to backfill those. Because many times by the time a customer may call in to reschedule their delivery, routing's been done, the orders are being picked. It's too late you can't just add a new order onto an existing route. Because now it's, you're delaying customer times, the trucks may run out of time.
And that capacity is lost for good.
Right. So, in order to backfill that, we created this process where we're going out and looking at future scheduled orders, calling those customers and say, hey, Mrs. Jones, great news. We can get you scheduled for delivery tomorrow if you can be there to accept delivery.
What are those calls called? Happy calls?
No, well, yeah. I mean, so that's, that would be under the bucket of happy calls.
Yeah. That's a good call. That's definitely a good call to make. We've reached, and also our inventory levels from 1 to 3 distribution centers. I think we have triple the amount of inventory that we had prior to. So our ability to, speed to customer, we should be able to hit some new levels with all these new processes and systems. Another one that you've implemented recently is some brand new software recently to upgrade our demand planning and forecasting and replenishment. I know that we're in the middle of the transition at the moment, having converted one of our 3 distribution centers and working through the bugs and kinks. But what can you tell us about this new software program and what it will enhance for our supply chain?
Yeah, so this is VMI, Vendor Managed Inventory. It will replace AFI's current replenishment system, which looks at our demand, our supply, our inventory, and generates purchase orders as needed. And so, replenishment was great while it lasted. It's become a bit antiquated, but it served its purpose. But as days move forward and new technologies developed, we can use that new inventory to make us better. So this new system's been great so far. Like I said, we got a couple bugs and kinks we're working out and working with AFI and other Ashley licensees who are on Storis to work through those. But it's really going to open up a lot of possibilities for us. I mean, for one, the logic used to determine safety stock forecast is just much more logical than the existing system. Where I won't bore everyone with the details, but with the existing system, it'll create spikes and valleys. So you're kind of going like this, and one day you may need a lot of this sofa, then a couple weeks later it says you don't need anything, right? So this is the way it calculates now is based on written demand instead of delivered demand. So it's much steadier, much smoother, and should help us be in stock with what we need much more consistently. And then the other thing it does is it gives us much greater inputs into our forecast. So I think that opens up future opportunities for supply chain for a planning department where we can, we at Broad River tend to march to the beat of our own drummer. I don't think I'm giving away any secrets there, but we don't necessarily always follow the playbook of the promotions that Ashley may develop, right? I mean, very close, but we do our own thing sometimes, and having these inputs into our forecast will allow us to adjust to, what we are doing that is unique to Ashley for these promotions.
Well, regionalization is key to be able to have regionalized inputs. Well, when we put replenishment and allocation in place in, I think it was 2012, it was revolutionary for us at that time. And so Ashley also wrote VMI, and so putting it in place now will also have another revolutionary technology impact for us. And innovation is one of our core values, and that helps us continue to stay at the forefront and innovate. By the way, I don't think you're boring anyone with the supply chain discussion. I just looked at our listeners, and our supply chain executive listeners just went sky high after those last comments there. Okay, so let's go 3 years out.
Okay.
Again, still with your Nostradamus hat on.
Yep.
What would your 2025 vision for supply chain be?
Yeah, so I would like us to get much more proactive. We are very reactive now, and some of that out of necessity, obviously, with the pandemic. But a lot of time we spend is answering requests from retail or customer care, and I would like to get to the point where I don't think that ever goes away. Right, we're still the retail support department, so it doesn't go away completely. But I would like to minimize those kinds of things. Right, so I think that requires training. Training not just within supply chain, but cross-departmental training. And then, like I talked about the planning department, right? So if we have the inventory when we need it, no one has any questions. You write your sales order and it's available as soon as the customer is, and then I think we want to continue to look at ways that we can get orders out to our customers faster. Maybe going to a next day delivery or, possibly even the same day delivery and sleep, so we can be competing with those, the mattress firms of the world and people like that.
I love the idea of constantly working the muscle for planning and getting more and more refined at planning, and the slack that will allow in our ability to operate faster with speed on same day and next day. So I think that's a great vision to have. Well, I mentioned the one core value of innovation with VMI and coming into play. And you talked about another core value, which is collaboration earlier. And so perhaps, and we talked about where supply chain kind of sits. I mean, to me, it's like at the hub. It sits at the intersection of so many different corporate functions. I feel like it's like a central cross-departmental hub or meeting juncture where all other roads connect and intersect. Can you talk about how you interact with various departments and how you embrace collaboration within supply chain?
Yeah. So that it kind of, I think calling it a hub is very appropriate, right? I mean, we touch every part of the organization. It's what I really love about being in supply chain. I think it's the one area where you could really learn the entire business the fastest, because you're working with merchandising, you're working with marketing, you're working with retail, you're working with customer care, you're working with finance, you're working with operations, you're working with logistics. I mean, there's not an area of the business that we're not talking to at some point during the week. So we've talked a lot about planning, right? So now that collaboration with merchandising about product life cycle and marketing about promotions becomes all that much more important. So that just opens the door for more collaboration with these departments.
Well, I want to give you a chance to talk about, you talked about growth and development of your department. I want to give you a chance to talk about your leaders within the supply chain department and what their roles and responsibilities are. Yeah,
I mean, this is probably a biased opinion, but I'm going to say I'm amongst the strongest leaders in the company. And it starts with Sophia Inclisian. We onboarded her last November, and she's just been a godsend. She is taking complete ownership of the areas she is responsible for in supply chain. Has really freed me up. You've given me the feedback several times. You need to be working on the business and stop working in the business, right? So having these strong leaders in place allows me to work on the business. So it really starts with her. And then I talked before about, the 3 order management specialists that I started that are now supervisors. So that's, Danielle Lassiter, Alex Lowe, and Sherry Eddington. They continued to grow and develop and lead their teams and have done just an amazing job. And then, we were fortunate to poach from customer care a little bit too, right? So we got Cindy Waters and Mike Jones leading our delivery scheduling team.
Have you convinced Danielle to change her email address to?
It's a sore topic. We don't open that wound too often unless I want to just poke at her a little bit.
Yeah. We opened this podcast with the shift to remote work. For the most part, your department has gone 100% remote. How has that been going?
It's been amazing. I know there was a lot of trepidation to begin with about remote work, what that looks like, how can people function from home, how do you continue to work together and collaborate and communicate. And we were very intentional about that. We'd set up, Teams meetings, Microsoft Teams meetings, daily at first, just to make sure we were staying in constant contact with each other. But I mean, I took everyone's pulse. We took took everyone's pulse, a few weeks ago about their thoughts on work from home. And, do you want to come back hybrid? Would you want to come back to the office? And everyone is loving the flexibility. And I would say this, I think productivity is higher now than it was when we were in the office. Contrary to popular belief, I think there are fewer distractions at home than there are in the office sometimes.
Well, work is an output, right? It doesn't mean it's a place. It's an output. It's results oriented. And I think people want autonomy and flexibility as much as we can afford to provide it. But how have you been able to maintain something we're really proudful of, our culture? How have you been able to develop and maintain culture within a remote environment?
Yeah, so I think the first thing is Danielle Lassiter. So when we first went remote, it was 8 of us in the department, 9 of us in the department at that time, and she came up with this idea of quarantines. So quarantines.
I like that.
Yeah. So we would get together once a month, and it was just not work related. It was purely kind of get to know you icebreakers. She would develop come up with these questions. Hey, who's your favorite superhero? Would you want to be when you were a kid? Would you want to do with your life? And as the department has continued to grow, so has that meeting. We still do it to this day. Once a month, we get together, and all 30 of us get together on a call and go through those kinds of things. And it's gotten to the point where we have to go to these breakout sessions because the department is now so big. You can't have 30 people talking. We'd be there all day, right? Yeah. So now, we get together, we just small talk for a little bit, and then we break out and have these sessions and come back together and talk about what we discussed.
That's really, really cool. It's great to have someone on your team who can kind of help come up with creative ideas like quarantines and things to keep it fun and fresh and to avoid the Groundhog Day syndrome, right?
Yeah. What if there is no tomorrow? There wasn't one today, right?
Well, it's always good to lift each other up, infuse some levity, and maintain a well-balanced, healthy lifestyle and workplace culture. Any other winning habits or best practices along those lines to develop culture?
Yeah, so we encourage people to take advantage of the flexibility that work from home continues. We've talked about before. I'm in the best shape of my life, right? So I'm not a morning person. I'm up at 6 o'clock to get the kids ready for school and by the time they go to bed and I settle down, it's 9:00 and I'm like, I don't want to work out now. So, I'm able to take advantage of that time during the day and, make up time maybe in the evening or, maybe not some days, but, and work out and stay in shape. And we encourage people to do the same thing. Just make sure you're working on your own personal growth.
Yeah. Well-balanced, healthy mind, body, soul, spirit. Just make sure you get your work done.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And then there's a lot of symbiotic trust that goes with that. Like we trust you to get your work done, but also make sure you take care of yourself. So, okay, now that we're well into the episode, I got an icebreaker question for you. It's a good kind of get to know Brian Deckelnick at his core. So when you think about your legacy and how you want to be remembered, and let's say people are going to come up with 3 words to describe you, what do you want those 3 words to be?
Empathetic, compassionate, humble.
I love it. I think that very much describes you. Empathetic, compassionate, and humble. So since you've been a memory maker here at the River, what is something that you've learned about yourself and about what you've been able to accomplish that has surprised even you?
I think like a lot of new leaders, when I first started, I struggled with, those difficult conversations that you have to have with people, right? You dread them. You don't want to tell people they're not performing like they should be or, whatever the conversation needs to be. But over the course of the last years, we talked about this, the department has really grown and we have a lot of new and emerging leaders in the department. And that's really what I'm passionate about now, right? I love helping people grow and develop, especially, new and emerging leaders. So just, it was really a change of mindset for me. It wasn't, hey, here's what you're doing wrong. It's here's how we can help you continue to grow in your career and in life. And, I was listening to the supply chain leadership team was listening to a podcast, and I can't for the life of me remember who it was, but they gave this equation of love equals truth plus grace. And it really hit home for me, right? Because I was always really good at the grace part. It was the truth part, I tried to be, an honest person, but giving people honest feedback when it's hard to hear. So it really changed my mindset. Hearing that and like now that's the part of the job I love the most.
I love that you took a muscle that was probably the most atrophied or the weakest and you've really developed and it's become something you've got the biggest passion for now. What you love about, I was going to ask you what you love about your job, but you already answered that.
Yeah.
So do you have a really memorable or favorite supply chain story that you could share with us?
I don't know if it's a supply chain story per se, but I was at a Starbucks a couple months ago. And, pre-pandemic, no one knew what supply chain was. I mean, even my mom would be like, people ask me what you do. And she's like, something with inventory. I don't know. But supply chain became part of the everyday lexicon, right? Like news stories about it. Everyone knows what it is. So I'm at a Starbucks and I'm waiting for my coffee. And the guy's like, well, what do you do? I'm like, I work in supply chain. He goes, oh, so it's all your fault then, isn't it? Like, yeah, that's pretty much been the story of my life the last couple of years.
Well, were they like running out of milk and oat milk and all kinds of, they're probably running out of espresso at some point. I'm not sure. I know that
supply chain's fault.
That's supply chain's fault. Yeah. Well, someone's got to take the blame.
That's right.
I know that it always takes a village to achieve phenomenal success. Who are some of the unsung heroes and colleagues of your world? And tell us what they do that help you.
Yeah. I mean, so it starts with, just everyone on the supply chain team. They make my job so easy. They really do. Everyone, takes accountability and works together. And when there's a problem, they work together. Not everything has to go up to get resolved. So it starts with them. And they definitely don't get the recognition they deserve. And I will 100% take ownership of that. And that's something we've tried to correct. We started Supply Chain Memory Maker of the Quarter here in 2022. We've had 2 winners, Taisha Floyd and Stacy Melton.
That's awesome.
Yeah. But, and then, obviously, across the company, BI, business intelligence is another one. Lee and Griel are just amazing. We meet every 2 weeks, and every 2 weeks I try to come up with something to challenge them that they can't do. And they do it. It's amazing because, around here, data drives decisions. And without them and that data, we can't make good decisions and we don't know if we need to adjust the ones we made. And then, of course, it's, people in the warehouse and our LX drivers and who are out there. If it's 120 degrees in August or 20 degrees in February, they're out there and they're picking furniture and slinging furniture. And I've done that. I've worked in a warehouse, not furniture, but slinging 10-pound bags of potato chips. And it's hot and it's hard, and they're doing it with 100 and something pound sofas.
Yeah.
So it's just without them, none of this happens.
That's awesome. Our company's word of the year for 2022 is thrive. What does it mean for you to thrive? And what advice would you offer up to a fellow memory maker to help him or her thrive this year?
Yeah. So to me, thriving means being well balanced, work, home, and self, and I've always struggled with the self part. So my natural tendency would be to be a workaholic. But when I had kids, I made the decision, I was not going to be the cats in the cradle dad, right? I wasn't going to be calling them in 30 years and like, sorry, Dad, I don't have time for you. You didn't have time for me. So they have made me, they have made it very easy for me to balance, work and then home life. And then, what I came to realize here in the last couple of years is I wasn't spending enough time on me. So I've really tried to, dig into myself more and scratch, my own itch. Picking up golf. I've just started trying to learn Spanish. So I just, it's that healthy balance.
That's awesome. What's the best advice you've ever received?
So early in my career, I was working for a bank in New Jersey, and they had, what they would call Commerce University. So just these growth and development courses that they offered. And in one of them, they would ask, what is your greatest opportunity for self-improvement? And I said, well, I tend to take everything on myself. I don't ask for help enough. And someone, much older than me at that time, probably the age I am now, he was ancient then. But he said, when you don't delegate, not only are you overburdening yourself, but you are taking away the opportunity for someone else to learn and grow and develop. And here we are, 20 years later, and I still think about that every day when, when I'm thinking like, I could just do this. No, it's better for me to hand it off and help someone else grow and learn.
That's a really great perspective. So you've been with us for 3.5 years now. And if you could go back to your first day, what would you tell your younger self about what life is going to be like at Broad River Retail?
I would tell my younger self to buckle in. I mean, who could have seen these last few years coming, right? But then, the advice I would give myself is, jump in with both feet, be confident, and speak up. I always credit, you, Manny, and everyone else in this company. If there's a contradictory opinion out there, we want to hear it. That's how we get better.
Yeah.
We don't want groupthink to settle in.
Yeah.
And, so.
We like the saying, feedback is a gift.
That's right. Absolutely.
So I know we're biased, but we believe that our culture at the River is unique and really special. What is your favorite thing about our culture here at the River? And in your opinion, what is it that makes our culture special?
So, a lot of what I just spoke about, and really the one thing, or probably two things that stands out to me, and I give this a lot of times when I'm interviewing people for positions. Two of the proudest things I am for working here is the way we handled the pandemic, and the idea of shared sacrifice. So we were reading Everybody Matters as a executive team at that time, and trying, how they handled the financial crisis of 2008. And we had just gotten to the chapter of shared sacrifice, right? So we did not lay off a single person because of the pandemic. And I take a lot of pride in working for a company that managed it that way. And then the other thing is, after the George Floyd catastrophe, right? You standing up in front of the camera and speaking out about it, and the creation of the ARC. Just very proud to work for a company that has those kind of values and will stand on them.
Awesome. So what is one thing about Broad River Retail that you think would surprise others from the outside looking in? Is there a misperception or something?
Well, I think most people don't realize that we're an independently owned operator and
That's
licensee.
Right. Yeah.
I think most people think Ashley is Ashley, and whether it's an Ashley store in California or an Ashley store in North Carolina or Florida, they're all the same.
Yeah.
So just, understanding that, we are an independently owned licensee, and that provides some nice autonomy to kind of go in a direction that we feel is best for us.
Yeah. So what is something about you that would surprise your fellow memory makers?
I knew you were going to ask this, and I really struggled. I'm not an exciting person, but I think as people see me, when I am in the office or before, I always have my Spider-Man computer bag or superhero socks. On Teams, I often have a Marvel themed t-shirt on. I think people will be surprised to learn that I wasn't really into superheroes or anything as kids or comic books or anything like that. I mean, that's really a product of my children. Dylan, my oldest, when he was 3 or 4, flipped onto Disney Channel and Spider-Man was on, and it was like love at first sight. And his love for superheroes and all that has just expanded. And his younger brother has taken that on, and it's just really absorbed our house here in the last 7 or 8 years.
Well, when you said you weren't exciting, I was going to tell you that I could probably out-boring you, but I was into superheroes as a kid. So, well, what do you think are or have been the secrets to your success?
I don't really know how to answer that. I just try to do the next right thing every time I come to a fork in the road. Just do my work, do my best, do the right thing, and things have worked out.
I actually think there's a lot of wisdom in that. There's a new book coming out by Jeff Henderson about just doing the next thing. Sometimes people can get too much anxiety worrying about what they should do with their life. And how about just do the next right thing? So I think there's a lot of wisdom in that. So what are your best daily habits that serve you or have served you really well?
Yeah, like I said before, I've been working out, best shape of my life. And then, I think this pandemic has, for an introvert like myself, has not necessarily been as hard as, someone like you. But, it kind of, it opened my eyes on the importance of connection. Mm-hmm. And so I just had to be, working from home. It can be very easy to get lost in, your own head or whatever. So just being very intentional about reaching out to people and making sure you're connecting, and that could be about work or, many times it's not. It's about personal life and just connecting and being very intentional about that.
Absolutely. So mentorship, is so important. Where or from whom do you get your mentorship?
Yeah, it's hard for me to point to a specific person. I think I can learn from everyone.
Okay.
Everyone has something they can teach me. It's about having that, mindset going into any conversation you have with anyone. And I can point to different people in different areas of my life. I was not, when I was a kid, I didn't say, hey, I want to be a, leader in supply chain department. Like everyone else, I didn't know what supply chain was. So I kind of fell into it, and there have been people along the way that helped me grow into the area, grow into the supply chain area and learn. And then, I talked about work-life, balance before. And so picking the, brains of people who, I saw that, they were, presidents or CEO, and, ask them, how do you do it? How do you have this job? I mean, I know you're busy. How do you make sure you're home every night to have dinner with your kids and put them to bed? And then I continue to learn every day from almost every interaction I have with people. That's
awesome. So you seem like a very self-driven, self-motivated person. Where does your inspiration and motivation come from?
It's going to sound cliche, but it's my family. They're the reason I get up every morning. They're also the reason, like I talked about before, they're the reason why I turn off my computer and make sure I'm, there for dinner and there for bedtime.
Well, you talking about the vision that who you don't want to be. You don't want to be the cats in the cradle dad.
Right.
So you're working towards being a better version of. So I think that's great because it starts with a vision and then those lead to your daily actions and interactions. So if you could change one thing about the company today with the wave of your magic wand, what would it be?
Training. Yeah,
I've heard you say this before. Yeah.
And certainly this is not meant to be a slight on anyone at all. But I think, there's a lot of things that come to supply chain, a lot of requests that don't need to. And I think that has an impact on the guest at point of sale or when they're calling in, because they want that answer immediately. So if we can get people trained up and answer those questions on the spot, I think it'd be beneficial for everyone. Yeah, we need to cast a big vision about company-wide training and then start attacking it one day at a time, elevate everyone's level. So let's say that I decided to retire, and now that you've got this balanced lifestyle approach, I'm going to give you the keys to the company, and you're the new president and CEO of Broad River Retail. And guess what? Today is your first day in the new role. What would be your first order of business? I would create a DEI department.
Okay.
Obviously we have a very large minority population at Broad River. And I've heard more than once, there's not enough people at the top that look like me. I've heard it, on one-on-ones. We read it in the employee engagement feedback. So I think it's important that we put a lot of focus around that.
Yeah. There's a lot more to be done there. And we're excited about kind of some things that are the foundational things that are underway and underfoot, probably by the time this thing gets aired. So I know that you've had a chance to attend some of our virtual summits and master classes, and I know that leadership development is really important to you. What have been some of your favorite master classes that you've taken or speakers that you've listened to?
So I always love Adam Grant, Pat Lencioni. I love Pat Lencioni. He's a little off, but so am I. So I find him hilarious, but there's also a lesson in the humor. So I really enjoy listening to the two of them any chance I get.
And how do you sharpen your saw? What do you do to improve your supply chain skill set?
So our supply chain leadership team, earlier this year, we started a book/podcast club. So we started with podcasts, and we would just kind of identify areas that we felt like we all needed to develop, and we would find podcasts around that and listen and come back and discuss. And now we're going into our first book. So I talked about Pat Lencioni, and our first book is going to be the 5 dysfunctions of a team. So we're starting that.
That's a great one. So I guess that's the book you're currently reading?
That's the book I literally just started. Well, there's that, and then there's The Magic Tree House. There's Dog Man, so the nighttime reading to my kids.
We've gone through all the Dog Man books. And so what's in your feed? What podcast do you regularly listen to?
So first one I would say is The Problem with Jon Stewart. I'm a big Jon Stewart fan, love him. Really miss him on The Daily Show. But so I listen to that as much as I can. I do have a guilty pleasure podcast, Smartless, with Jason Bateman, Will Arnett, and Sean Hayes. It's, again, guilty pleasure. Not a whole lot of learning there, but it's just really entertaining. And then aside from that, I wouldn't say I listen to a specific podcast. I really look for topics that I'm interested in or want to learn and develop in, and kind of search by topic and then look for podcasts that way. That's
really cool. I know you love a good show. What show are you currently binge watching?
So I didn't have HBO in the early 2000s. So I've been catching up on a lot of those. So I've been watching The Sopranos. I just started the last season of The Wire. I think I'll probably do Oz next. So I'm catching up on those shows that everyone was talking about 20 years ago.
Did you do Game of Thrones?
Not yet. That's on my list as well.
Well, I'm watching House of the Dragon right now. It's awesome. It's amazing. So when you stop working for the day and have some time for yourself or your family, other than working out and exercising, what do you like to do for fun or to relax?
Yeah, I've been really trying to get into golf. I don't get on the courses as much as I'd like, but I love going to the driving range. Self-taught, so it's been a couple years. So I'm not in a complete embarrassment at this point. I've never taken lessons or anything, but I'm not missing the ball in every swing. So there's improvement there. Like I said, learning Spanish, trying to learn Spanish. It's something I've been wanting to do for a long time, and just kind of, like, oh yeah, I'm going to do it to that. I'm going to get to that. So one day I just you know what, I'm going to do it. I'm just going to do it.
Now, you played baseball as a kid, right?
I did.
Pitch or hitter?
Shortstop.
So is the swing translating to golf?
No. So, in fact, that's the most frustrating part of it. It's like, how can I hit a 80 mile an hour fastball? Probably can't anymore, but when I was younger. But this ball's sitting on a tee and I keep missing it. It's so frustrating.
Well, a really important question. Are the Yankees going to win the World Series this year?
Yes.
Oh, wow.
I mean, they have the MVP. They have the MVP on their team. There was a rough spell in August, but they're pulling it back together in September. I think this is the year.
So if they go to the series, are you going to a game?
I would love to.
Okay, we'll figure that out.
Yeah.
Well, here's another question. Will the New York Giants ever win another Super Bowl?
I mean, I would like to say yes. It's a... Next, no, they're heading in the right direction. I think their new coach, Dable. This week one. You saw the game or not, but it was the end of the game, and they were down by 1. They scored a touchdown. They were down by 1 with a minute and a half or something left, and they could have kicked the field goal to go for overtime, and they went for 2. So they're playing to win instead of playing to not lose. And it's been a long time since the Giants have played to not lose.
That's great. So to someone who is not a memory maker and is thinking of coming to the river, what advice would you offer to that person?
Come join us. I mean, come join us and jump in with both feet. Kind of like I talked about before, but same idea. I would tell myself on day one, jump in with both feet, be confident in yourself and speak up.
Love it. Okay. Before I let you off the hot seat here, and you've done a great job answering these questions, I know you hate this part, but I did ask some of your colleagues about you, and so
we can just cut here. I mean,
these are great. I want to read a few words.
Okay.
This is from Alex Lowe. Brian is an exceptional leader. He goes above and beyond for each and every one of us. We are more than just coworkers. We are family. We stick together through thick and thin. We work long hours, but have fun and laughs at the same time. Even when Brian, Danielle, and I were working daily until 11 p.m. scrubbing PODs. Having his full support through the adoption of my 2 boys and being able to work from home so I can see them in the mornings and afternoons when they return from school has been the biggest blessing for me and my family. We love you, Brian. This is from Sophia. Brian has been so much more than a director to me. He is a mentor, a friend, and a person you can count on in any situation. He is a listener, a person with integrity who leads with empathy, which is a word you said earlier. He will fight for what's right and be a stepping stone on our way to thrive. I always tell him, I want to be you when I grow up and learn more every day from such an inspiring person. And here's from Danielle, Miss Quarantines. Brian has hands down been the most influential person I've worked with here at Broad River. He has been someone I can look up to, a shoulder to cry on when I'm frustrated about a problem, a mentor to guide me through my growth in this company, and a leader who fights for his team. No one could have led our team through the struggles of the last 2 years better than him. Even when he's staring out the window, I know he's always listening to me when I speak and usually has a nice, snappy comeback for any nonsense I throw his way. And this is from Stacy McCormick. Brian's impact on our company through COVID and the massive supply chain interruptions cannot be overstated. Brian sought out solutions at every turn to get product faster and increase delivered sales for our guests, memory makers, and company. Super intelligent, super collaborative, and amazing to work with. Brian has an upstream and proactive mindset that permeates throughout his team in Broad River Retail. He is also happy that the Giants are 1-0 as this is recorded. Just a couple more. Brian, this is from Lynn Knowles. Brian is a great mentor and partner. He approaches every situation with thoughtfulness and a solution to do what is best for all involved. Watching him in action is a good lesson for all of us. With the challenges to our supply chain over the past 2.5 years, he has dedicated himself and his team to achieving the best possible outcome for all of our memory makers. I personally appreciate Brian because he provided empathetic leadership to me at a critical time. He is a man of integrity who always considers the impact of his actions on others. I consider him a friend as well as a fellow memory maker. And lastly, from Manny, it was a long courting process to land Brian at the river, but it was well worth the wait. I think I've heard that phrase before. We are blessed to have such a thoughtful, people-first leader. Brian has embraced the culture and has been additive in helping us with enriching it. Thank you, Brian. Brian, it's been a joy to have you on the pod. Hey guys, join us every Wednesday. We try to bring you fresh new content wherever you're listening or watching. Hey, if you're on YouTube, mash that subscribe button or that like button. Or if you're on Apple, Google, Amazon, or Spotify, please subscribe and let us know how we can get better, make it better. This has been Brian Deckelnick, our Senior Director of Supply Chain. Thank you, Brian.
Thanks for having me, Charlie. It's been a pleasure.